Time, ladies and gentlemen, please, and welcome to everybody who's online. Thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Welcome back to those of you who were with us before. My name's Daniel Sattar. I'm the Chief Exec of Big Issue Invest. We are here because 30 years ago, John Bird and Gordon Roddick set up The Big Issue, an extraordinary magazine that still brings us here today. Copies are on sale. Our vendor, Carlos, is just outside, and he will very happily sell you a copy of the magazine. So please do buy a copy of the magazine. He has bought copies of the magazine from The Big Issue, and he's here to sell them to you. So please don't go away without buying a copy of The Big Issue. This is the edition here today. I think if I've adequately sold The Big Issue magazine, my job is done and I can rest. It's going to be an extraordinary program this afternoon, mostly because we brought you the people who we invest in. That's the most extraordinary thing that we do. We're going to talk about, we're going to recap for those of you who were here in the fund management session, fund management. For those of you who weren't, we'll talk about our lending, we'll talk about our impact, our investees will talk to you, we'll talk to you about our future funds and everything else under the sun. A very big welcome from me, a very big thank you to all of you, all of our board members, committee members, advisors and staff who make all of this stuff happen. So thank you, enjoy the afternoon. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Danielle. My name is ben.tiplady. I'm an investment analyst for Big Issue Invest, and I'm also your host for this evening. I just wanted to give a bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded, so if you end up being on screen at any point, that will be distributed, so sorry about that. We'll also be distributing the slides, so you don't need to feel under pressure to take any notes this afternoon. Also, if there is a fire, we're not expecting any sort of fire alarm, but if there is a fire, if you're on the left, your nearest exit is right behind you. If you're on the right, it's the way that you came in. If you're on Zoom, you need to leave your house if there's a fire. I'm not really in charge of that. That got a much better laugh at the first session than it did the other one. I just want to run through the agenda for today. So could we have the next slide, please? Or my clicker isn't working. So on the agenda, we're going to have Warren Taylor, who's the chair of Big Issue Invest. We're also going to hear from Duncan Soanes, who works at Collage Arts, this wonderful building that we're in. So we're very grateful to you, Duncan. We're also going to hear from our impact team. So Josh and Chloe are going to tell us about all of the impact that we created over the past year and how we measure that sort of stuff. And then we're going to hear from some investees. We're going to hear from the London Community Land Trust, Social Stories and Sustainable Workspaces about the impact that they create for their beneficiaries. And then we'll hear about future strategy from our head of lending, Kevin Lloyd Evans. And then the Growth Impact Fund with Johnny Page and Matu. And then we'll hear from John Gilligan on Fund 4 with the closing message from Danielle Sattar, and then we can all do some networking and there'll be some nice samosas out the front and stuff like that. Sorry, people on Zoom, we haven't managed to provide that for you. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Duncan, and you can tell us all about the wonderful work you do at Collage Arts.
Slides move on, just ask. Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing your meeting to us. It's fantastic to see you all here. I'm talking to you on behalf of Collage Arts, as Ben said. For the last 36 years, we've been working for the community in Wood Green. We're part of an ever-decreasing club of the sort of founding standard bearers of the community arts movement. Can I move on the slides, please? Okay, the space we're in at the moment is called McQueen's Theatre, and for the young people that come to our College Voices program, they think we've named it after Lightning McQueen. Some people think it's named after Stephen McQueen, Oscar Award winner and Turner Prize winner, or Alexander McQueen, or in actual fact, our inspiration was Thelma McQueen, who was in Gone with the Wind, but wasn't allowed to come to the premiere because it was in a white-only theatre. So that sort of reminds us always of the journey that we're on. Next slide, please. This is where we are. We talk about ourselves as a powerhouse, and we're not joking. You can see our solar energy on our roof here. About 70% of our energy is being produced from the roof above us. But that's just the very tip of the iceberg of what's going on. So we jumped through a more Angelique quote there, I think. But what it was actually saying is that thought about the fact that we marvel at the butterfly, but we don't sort of think about the process it's gone through for that beautiful thing to have happened. So we've got these 5 buildings, we've got 80,000 square feet, we've got all these artists here, but so what does that matter? Why would anybody be interested in that? Because surely, just a few empty buildings, the private sector be really good at that. So what's the added value that we bring along? And why should anybody care about what we do? Oh, there's the quote. Sorry, it jumped backwards and forwards. So there we go. Yeah. And so what we do is a whole series of interventions with our tenants. So we work in terms of creating flexible terms for them, creating spaces and options that work for them, brokering shared spaces. We provide workforce development. We managed to bring in £2 million worth of COVID support for the tenants that were here. They got nearly £10,000 each for business continuity. We can get access to training qualifications, including our qualification, a work-based qualification that we've worked on with European partners for the last 13 years. We can provide hardship support. We can develop work streams and markets and commissions. In fact, we did £20,000 worth of commissions in a building just around the corner through the lockdown. And most of all, we provide safe, clean, accessible spaces. And Big Issue have been absolutely instrumental in helping us to do that by ensuring that we could fit out all the meanwhile spaces that we're now operating in. Thank you. So we were asked recently to submit our diversity report, which threw us a bit really, because we don't have a diversity plan. We have a business plan, and diversity is our DNA. It's in everything we do. So we have a diverse workforce that is not only diverse in terms of its makeup, but also shares many of the lived experiences of our client groups. And that gives us a real empathy and an ability to really focus in on what's needed. Thank you. I talked about diversity being important to us. The next few slides are going to show you some of the ways in which diversity plays out. So, you've seen our venue. 40% of our performers are people of color, 77% of our Kickstarters, nearly 60% of the young people that come here on a Saturday, and about a quarter of our community participants. Thank you. In terms of women, about a third of the performers at the moment, about nearly three quarters of our studio tenants, and around three quarters of our Voices participants, and about 83% of our community program. Our community program really focused on women of color who were impacted by COVID, particularly ones who were sort of stuck at home. Thank you. And over 50s, a client group particularly close to my heart now, 41% of performers, about 30% of our tenants, and about 70% of our community participants. Thank you. And LGBTQ, the information here is less complete. We try very hard to create our data in very unintrusive ways. But about 20% of our performers at the moment are declared into this community, about 4% of our tenants. And in the last training program we did, about 30% of the trainees because of the targeting of that work. And the council have just done a survey of people in the community, and this was declared, Caramel was seen as one of the very few spaces where people felt completely safe in Wood Green. So what's the significance of all of this? This development of this ecosystem that we're starting to put into place here, why is that important? Well, over the last 25 years, we've built up one of the strongest concentrations of recording studios anywhere in Europe. There's about 20 recording studios above us, mainly black-owned and black-led, and you'll see the prime of London's grime scene here. The grime scene runs from here and another building in Chiswick. But that hasn't happened by accident. It's that combination of work that we've been doing with those organizations to midwife those organizations and get those into place that's actually led us to the position where we have that diversity within our client portfolio. Thank you. So what's changed for us, however, is when we got here, the buildings behind us were deserted and unloved and unused. And Manoj and the team that were working with him thought this was a great place for artists' studios to be developed. So we had 120,000 square feet originally as a squat, and then on a more and more formal basis, and then a 25-year lease that has recently come to an end. And as a result, we're now working in many more meanwhile spaces. Now, meanwhile spaces are fantastic in terms of holding an artistic community together, but they're really challenging for us in lots of other ways. So we've estimated that for every square foot of space that we take on in a meanwhile space, it costs us somewhere between £7 and £15 to renovate that and get it ready for artists to move into. It probably costs us something like £5 for the to decant the tenants at the end of the process, because we're only paying rent on, they'll only pay rent on one of the spaces, and we're moving them between spaces. And it costs us about £3 or £4 to return the building to the state the landlords need it in to hand it back. Now, when we're working over a long period of time with those sorts of figures, it's fine. But actually, with many of the meanwhile spaces, we have an assumption that they're going to be 3 or 4 years. Sometimes that extends. But that's a really challenging scenario for us in terms of meanwhile spaces. But it's really important that we hold this group of artists together here, because it's quite part of what makes this place important. Thank you. So we need to think about how we can safeguard for the future. And this building is the one building that we can get a long lease on. We're working with the private landlords that own this, and we can see spaces above us, and we can see spaces to the side of us that could generate us about 61,000 square feet within this building. Thank you. And if we move on and we can persuade the council that we should move across into the space next door and take over the roof as well, there's a potential for about 91,000 square feet within this footprint. Thank you. And there's plenty of demand. So in 2018, we tried to articulate why it's important to have a community of artists here in Wood Green and what they can do. And what we started to look at was, what are the big problems that the community identifies? Not what are the solutions, not putting the solutions on them, but tell us what you think the big issues are that we should be involved with, and how do we work forward with those? So, thank you. We talked to a whole range of partners. We started to look at a program, and over the last 3 or 4 years, we've worked up to a program which is costing us, which we're investing in just over £1,000 a day, out of our, which we have to raise or earn in order for that program to be delivered. Thank you. So, different challenges that we identified. We talked to young people. We did a massive consultation in 2019, and one of the areas that came up was hate speech. So this is one of the wicked challenges that we identified, and that's really important to you if you're a young Muslim girl who's having terrorists shouted at you because you're walking through Wood Green modestly dressed. Thank you. We were very concerned about the whole issue of gang violence. There's a group of, there's several gangs that meet here. There's a corridor where a great deal of gun and knife crime happens, and a lot of young people are killed and are stabbed. So we wanted to look at how we intervened with that group. And so we've got an alternative provision for young people who are out of school, quite often not at home. And these 2 young guys came on our music program, which I work with Tony in a studio upstairs. And they like the fact that they're along the corridor from where Stormzy might be recording his latest record. That's really important to them in terms of, we identified another challenge, which was in terms of youth unemployment, and about 100 young people will be placed by our training and enterprise team through the Kickstart program. And any of you who are interested in having a 6-month placement of a fantastic young person, talk to us. So again, we're making a massive difference to those young people. We also have a campaigning element to what we do and our online production material. So at the moment, we're working on a series of information films that are passing on information about the Windrush Compensation Scheme. The Windrush Compensation Scheme is a hopeless name. So in terms of the material we're putting out, we're using this UK migration compensation. About 8% of the fund has been even applied for so far. And there are about 20,000 people that need to be found to get onto that scheme. So we're working with community groups to get that on. So we build up this eco-structure. We intervene with preschool, we intervene at school age, we intervene at within the community. Thank you. I've already told you about the Kickstart team. We have an online presence. I've already explained to that. We have the venue, as you've already seen and heard about. And then we have this 80,000 square feet of artist studios. This is what we call our ecology. Thank you. So we used to refer to it as a pipeline. Now we don't think of it as a pipeline. We think of it more as a climbing frame. You can come in at different places and you can work your way through, and there's different elements of it that might be useful to you and you might be able to take on. But we're a little bit like the Jesuits. You bring us the preschooler and we'll give you an artist studio until you're 92. You don't ever have to leave. Thank you. And those partnerships are really important because these elements that we bring together, we've got a value-led approach in terms of a safe space for people to come to. We've got access to young people in a meaningful sense. We've got the performing space which they love and come and take control of. We have a critical mass of creatives, so almost anything we want to do, we can bring people in and have the expertise. We have the community links and we have the workspaces as well that people can move on into. And if we're going to safeguard into the future, then actually being a value-led business, these are the building blocks that are really important to us in terms of supporting community cohesion, having environmental responsibility, being community responsive, building up appropriate partnerships across other like organizations, really incorporating diversity into our mainstream of our work, and supporting the whole area of creative enterprise as a business. And in fact, in this ward, the creative industries is the predominant driver for workforce development. And we continue to be a catalyst for change. Thank you. So part of what we're finding is Wood Green has no higher education provision at the moment, which is a big challenge in terms of young people being naturally exposed to higher education as an experience, and which is why the provision that we provide for young people, we really mix up. So we have young people who are clients of the care system alongside people from the most leafy parts of expensive parts of the borough, because we want them to talk about aspiration about the future. We want them to plan for the future and to think big. But our spaces have become a magnet for a number of training providers, and those have all the work we've been doing around music tech has got the interest of the Sonys and the Metropolises and the Contemporary Academy of Contemporary Music. But we also have Jackson's Lane learning disability adults coming in to work with us as well. So as we start to look up, we start to think forward about what we need. And one of the things that's happened during the whole COVID period is we've taken back control of our whole catering facility. So the more you eat and the more you drink tonight, the more you're supporting our young people's services, because all the profits as a social enterprise, obviously all the profits from everything we do is reinvested into our delivery. And you can see Manoj leading from the front there. So what do we need? We need to be able to secure some long-term tenancies or freeholds that safeguard this community of artists. We need to rebuild our earned income through the development and through our venue. We need to build some long-term funding relationships based on social impact with partners or high net worth individuals. We need to rebuild our financial stability after the hit of COVID, where we invested heavily in the community, but we had no earned income for over 15 months. And we really want to capitalize on all that interest in learning to start to create a creative learning hub, because of all those elements of the building blocks can all come together in such a creative way. And to continue to develop our services to meet demand. So we want to explore community-led, and so we're looking for social investment partners that want to explore a community-led regeneration approach and see creativity as a vehicle for that, that can see the value of the arts ecology and the building blocks that we have here in one space in the way that I've tried to explain, and understand why what we're doing matters, and understands that this is a value for money proposition. So that's where we are. And this is the young people in this building. We asked them what they wanted to do for Christmas, and they decided creepy Christmas and zombie Christmas were what they wanted to do. So these are young people waiting for the zombie apocalypse. Can you just click onto the video for a few seconds? The film ended up being called Trapped, and I thought, you're in here for 3.5 hours. This is probably exactly how you feel. So gradually the shutter came down and on these young people in the piece that they just created. Because everything we do in terms of the young people is led by them. So their creativity drives the ideas, and it's them that decide exactly what's going to happen. So I'm sure this is exactly what's going through your minds at the moment. The shutters are down, reflecting here for another couple of but that's what happens when you let young people say, what would you like to do for a Christmas show? Obviously, you have a zombie apocalypse. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope that's been useful.
Thanks, Duncan. We now move on to Warren Taylor, Chair of Big Issue Invest.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I live just up the road, so I had no influence about the AGM being held here, so I thank you for organising that. But it's actually also so fantastic to see something that literally is on my doorstep. That was really, really impressive. So thank you. It's the sort of organisation that we like to support. We want to support more of, doing really high impact work. So it's absolutely amazing. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone in the room and on Zoom. I hope you enjoy the afternoon. The idea is to hear more about the great things the team has been doing this last year, which I think, goes without saying, has been a pretty interesting one. Encourage you to read the fund reports, the impact report when it comes out. You hear more about read more about some of the organisations we've supported. You're going to be hearing from 2 or 3 of them this afternoon, some of the amazing impactful work that they've done. I want to start by thanking the team and the number of colleagues that have been so really, really helpful and supportive over the last year to build what is a fantastic organisation that is Big Issue Invest. Just as a very brief introduction as to who I am and my background. So I've been involved with the Big Issue Group and indeed and BII for 25 plus years. So I go back quite some time. I've been the chair of Big Issue Invest for the last 5 or so years. A corporate lawyer by profession, although I've recently stepped away from a career as an M&A lawyer in a city firm. So now trying to focus a bit more on this sector. In fact, I've actually just started a master's course in social investment and grant making, inspired by the team. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be calling on them to answer some of my assessments. So get ready, guys. Before I sort of open up to and let everyone else speak, I just thought it was worth talking through a couple of the major things that we as a board have been doing this last year, as well as the sort of business as usual, day-to-day supporting the team, just ensuring things that they are supported, that we can be there for the advice and anything else that they need from us as a board. We've had 2 specific projects which I think has been worth drawing to your attention. We as an organisation are looking to grow. We are looking to grow significantly. We believe that what we do is really important, that we do it well, and that we have significantly more to add. So we need to make sure as an organisation that we are fit for purpose, and not just fit for purpose for what we do now, but what we are planning to do. And we'll come on to what we're planning to do over the next few years. So one of the big focuses is this year is just to look at our governance structure, look at the whole organisation holistically, and making sure that we are that fit for purpose and that we do have the people around to support us in that growth strategy. So we at the actually as towards the beginning of lockdown COVID, we started a recruitment process. So we looked at our board, we did a skills audit, we checked, we wanted to grow the board, we weren't big enough, and we needed to add some experience. So we did a full extensive recruitment process. We drew significant interest from a broad and very impressive range of applicants, which was great. I think one of the advantages of working for the Big Issue Group is that the brand itself is a great draw. So that really helped us being able to choose from the best of the best. And we recruited 4 new directors. They really have added a significant amount to our already existing great board. So Sarah Redford ex-director of Investments of Social and Sustainable Capital, head of Investments of Social Investment Business, ex-RBS senior director. Louise Boothby, who is investment partner at Collar Capital, the private equity fund manager. Mark Sims, CEO of the charity social enterprise P3, and Mark Alan Morellis, who is ex-Disney, ex-Apple, now the CEO of something called the Institute of Imagination. I'm still trying to get my head around what that is. Really, really strong, involved, active new board members who joined our existing board of Tim West, who some of you know, I don't know how much people long-term involvement with the group will know our existing board. Tim West, who's Pioneers Post, social entrepreneur who's got a media background, Amy Clark, who's founder and chief impact officer of Tribe Impact Capital. Sandeep Sachdeva is 25-year banking experience, and he's now CEO of Safe in India Foundation, all supported by Parveen Bird and Nigel Kershaw, who are our group representatives. So I hope you would agree, an impressive and a diverse board with strong social investment, PE, social sector, marketing, banking, finance, and some legal experience. That, together with our Big Issue Invest Fund Management Board, chaired by Pete Flynn, whose ranks have also been boosted this year by the addition of Selena Valencia McDonald, who is Executive Director of Goldman Sachs and Trustee of the Centre for Homeless Impact. We've introduced and grown our board committees. So we've added significant new high quality independent members to our Audit and Risk Committee, our Impact Committee, our Marketing Reputation Committee and Strategy Committee. And we're still looking for more members for one or two of those committees. We have our investment committees. Overall, a really powerful group to advise and support the team and to help us take us forward with confidence. On that, for the next big project that we've been undertaking is been a strategy review. And we've been developing our strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. We've had the support and help of Oliver Wyman and Lippincott to guide us through that process. And we're very grateful for their support. It's a strategy to back human potential, a strategy where impact comes first, where we push for social equality, where we bring more than just money to our investors. We look to promote them. We openly share our lessons learned with our investees and with the wider sector. It's an exciting, ambitious growth strategy for growth. The business planning is ongoing and will be undertaking over the coming weeks. So we're on our way. This strategy spans the full gambit of what Big Issue Invest does, from its corporate social venturing, to its lending, to its fund management, to its impact advisory businesses. When it comes to funds under management, we've got 50, 60 million at the moment. You'll hear more about the precise numbers later. We're looking to add in the shorter term with our lending and fund management fundraising to put that up to 150 odd million. And I'm sure you'll hear more about the new funds that we're looking to raise this afternoon. And we're getting some really great feedback on those discussions for those fundraisings. The strategy, this 150 million is the interim, because our ideal target over the next number of years is to reach 500 million of assets under management. To have the ability to commit something like between 75 and 100 million a year into the cutting edge of social enterprise finance that we focus on a regional scale, on a national scale, providing the core solutions to poverty in line with the group's overall mission. example is we're looking to target 70% of our investments in the areas of highest need. The annual commitment would represent a substantial new flow of high impact additional resource to our sector. So this is the 30th year of the Big Issue Group. As I said, I think I've been around for about 25 years of those. I think BII can look forward with great confidence. I hope you won't mind me saying saying confidently that Big Issue Invest has done really, really well since we were set up in 2005. And we are continuing that progress, and we aim to do much, much more. The team and my colleagues have done really well in difficult times in the pandemic. And for that, I'm going to express my personal thanks to everyone, to all of that support, to all the people that put in a huge amount of time and effort, to the hard work and dedication of the team. We're now set up for growth with strong governance, an excellent strong team, an ambitious strategy, and a commitment to and focus on the high impact organisations that we badly need to support. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and I think we're going to hear from some of our investees.
Before we do that, we're going to hear from Impact. Josh and Chloe, why don't you take it away?
Thank you very much, Ben. I'll pop on to the next slide. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here. So Chloe and I are going to provide a quick overview of the impact that our Big Issue investees and how we've been supporting them over the last year. So as of March 21, we were supporting 184 social enterprises and charities with about 39.7 million invested. So that 62% of that was in areas of high deprivation across the UK. And that sets us up nicely for increasing the target of supporting people in highly deprived areas, as Warren just said in our emerging strategy. The top 5 UN SDGs that we align to are all within what we call our core solutions to poverty. So we support on good health and well-being, a great example from the lending team being the Respite Association. So helping unpaid carers to get at some respite through grant provision and finding a retreat for them and helping them have alternative provision for the people that they care for and love the most. We work with people supporting people to jobs with the Decent Works programs, such as the Mental Health Employment Program. Sustainable Cities is where we support housing. You'll hear from London Community Land Trust soon. And you'll also see in our impact report coming out. Be very excited for this, I'm sure. Homes for Good, our largest investment last year up in Scotland. So very proud of that, of course. £3.5 million supporting housing in Glasgow. And areas such as quality education and reduced inequalities means that we're helping young people from diverse backgrounds who have been marginalised from mainstream education in areas such as Burtonshaw, Merseyside, you see from last year, and Big Creative Training, who we work with through the fund management team. Through the amazing work our investees have done, they've supported over 1 million people, or 1.16 million people over the last year, which is an increase from the previous assessment we did. During the same period, though, the total number of jobs in our investees reduced by about 17%, despite the portfolio growing. So what's that saying? COVID is obviously having an effect, so we need to keep being patient and keep being supportive of our investees. I'm going to hand over to Chloe, who's going to talk through that support that we provide.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit, probably slightly less exciting, the support that we provide and the impact that we try and have on our investees to support them with their businesses. And there's a number of ways that we do that. So one of them is how they've used our investment. So this year, 25% of our investments went to businesses to help them to increase an existing area of their operations, which is an increase of 4% from last year. Another way that we do that is looking at where we're investing. So although we're still quite heavily invested into London, about 42%, this year we've had a big increase outside of London. So one of those areas is Scotland, which we increased investment in by 183%, which is great for Josh. That's partially through our Power Up Scotland programme, which supports early stage organisations. And our investment into Homes for Good from our Social Enterprise Investment Fund 2. Another way that we've started to look at our attribution as an investor is through a research project that we've kind of collaborated on with Big Society Capital. So we've looked at the impact, the growth of impact and resilience of our investee organizations over the last year. And we've particularly looked at how we've been impactful alongside other investors, because we work with a lot of other investors in lots of our investments. And what we found from that kind of research that we did was that when we were the sole investor, which we are in the majority of our investments, or when we were the sole investor alongside one other investor, which is about 65% of all our investments, our support and our help to our investee organizations was seen as more essential and more helpful than when we were kind of one of a bigger consortium of investors, which is really interesting for us. And it's kind of part of a bigger, longer term piece of work that we're looking to do to kind of address and assess our additionality as an investor, particularly alongside other partners that we work with. And if we move on to the next slide, I'll briefly talk about our diversity, equity and inclusion work. So I think everyone probably in this room knows we've been developing our DEI work for a long time now, a couple of years. And it's become a really important part of everything we do at Big Issue Invest. As Warren already said, it's become one of 3 kind of major strands of our new strategy, pushing for social equality. So that's kind of internally and externally as we support our portfolio. And in the last year we published a review of our diversity and representation. And we found a lot of interesting insights, but one of them was that our leadership in our investee organizations weren't measuring disability or monitoring disability as much as a lot of other diversity characteristics. And when we updated our annual review this year, even though disability-led organizations had much higher representation than they did last year, that monitoring was still quite low compared to other diversity characteristics. And I think it showed us that there's still a lot of work that we need to do just generally to create a fully inclusive portfolio across a range of diversity characteristics. And there's a lot that we can still do to support our investees with their own DI work in this area. And that's really something that we're excited to engage on in the future with our investees. Another area that we recently launched this year, which we're also really excited about, is publishing an internal review of our diversity characteristics at Big Issue Invest. So that is also shared in our impact report to be shared in November. But essentially, we looked at the demographics of our staff team, our senior management team and our board. And it's kind of uncovered a lot of areas that we can always improve in and we are keen to develop. One of which I think you can probably see in the bottom of the screen is our gender representation. And particularly at a senior management team level, we're really looking to improve that internally, and the whole team's kind of really on board and behind this as a DI plan. So I think they're the highlights. But as I said, all our kind of impact and learning will be shared in our impact report in November, alongside our kind of full portfolio and staff team breakdowns of our demographics. And I'll just hand back to Josh to run through our research.
Thank you, Chloe. I'll be very quick. So just to say, we've launched 2 research and sort of learning sharing initiatives at Big Issue Invest last year. So last year, Chloe published a free-to-use diversity, equality, and inclusion measurement tool, which is up on our website. So you can download it and you can look at the characteristics of your organization or your clients, beneficiaries, customers. And in 2022, we've collaborated with Social Value UK and Unlimited to enhance that tool to help people develop further than just measurement and think about policy and inclusive practices. We continue to work with the support of Esme Fairburn and Foundation and the Axis Foundation on the Beyond the Check initiative, which is looking at the value for money of the support that we provide to our investees as a social investor. So far we've worked with 5 investors across 8 funds, and we found for every £1 we spend on technical assistance or support, we're generating £1.20 of benefit and support. So if anyone wants to get involved in these research initiatives, ask us questions about the impact data, come find Chloe and I, and we'll be very happy to talk about it. And I'll hand over to Ben. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And from our impact measurement, we go directly to London Community Land Trust, who are going to talk about the work that they do and have done with Rupesh. I think you brought along a prop.
This is working.
Yeah. Do you want me to click through?
Is that okay? Thank you. Hi there. It's a little bit emotional. This. I'm going to share a story about London Community Land Trust, the communities we work with and for, and a project made possible by Big Issue Invest. I'm going to start that by going way, way back. The next slide. CLTs, community land trusts, started in the civil rights movement in the US, where there was an action to create long-term opportunities for economic and residential independence for communities. And the vehicle that was established were CLTs, democratic, not-for-profit organizations to develop land for the benefit of the community. And elsewhere, and in another time, Citizens UK in London at the time were building the capacity for communities to have a bigger say in public life. And that began in the 90s. And they fought and won a campaign for a living wage, which then became the London Living Wage. Having done that, they moved into housing and they created what was originally called the East London CLT. And they borrowed the philosophy of CLTs from the States. Next slide. Oh, too fast. Got too much to share here. They started a campaign in East London. And you can see the campaign here. It's for a site in Bow. It's called St. Clement's. And you see Colin, a former sort of board member, holding the then mayor to account. And 23 homes were secured on that site, CLT homes. We know that those homes will be truly locally affordable in perpetuity because we price homes at a multiple for median income, not on the market. And those 23 homes have our residents in them. They are our members and they represent a third of our board. I'm going to move on. We're also campaigning in Lambeth. This is Christchurch Road. And we've been able to secure about 600,000 this year from the GLA to get that moving. And we've already been having a chat with Glenn about funding that in due course. And again, we'll campaign anywhere and everywhere for affordable housing in London, as you can see here. And again, and these are our younger key workers who are getting ready now because it takes quite a long time to get truly locally affordable housing built. So we start early. And this is another one. So this is a lovely community steering group in Cable Street that I've been working with. And they did campaign outside the mayor's office for housing. Next. So I'm going to come to a place called Brasted Close, and this is in Lewisham. And there was a hunt that started in 2016 with Lewisham citizens for land upon which we would build CLT homes. So we were given CLT homes in St. Clement's. We wanted to build our own. And this garage site was found, and with the community in the area, a community steering group was formed, and Archeo was selected by the community to design and develop that proposal. That went into planning. It had one objection, which was more of a comment. That objector is now part of the community steering group. And we talk about risk in development, but there's very, very low risk when communities take projects to planning. The risk actually comes a little later on. So I'm going to move on, if I may. This is really quite important. And I think I could talk about how we, all the metrics and all the contracts we signed. But there was a time in November last year in lockdown when London CLT was in real trouble. And we weren't sure whether we were going to survive. And at the same time, we didn't know whether we would be able to build at Brasted Close. And a chap called Clay asked, could he put a mural up because he wanted to do an arts project? And we said, we'll put a mural up, but I promise you this, we'll be building in March. And there was this like, no, you're not going to be doing that. And then at London CLT, we decided if there's one thing we're going to do, we are going to build these homes. And that was fairly brutal. What we need is confidence and conviction. And that actually required us to let go of our entire design team, other than the architect, our cost consultant, and our project manager, picked up the phone to Glenn and said, this is happening. And in the first quarter of this year, we said to the GLA, we're building this. I remember the call because I said it's a commitment. It's a verbal commitment. We're doing it. They doubled our grant And in a 21-day period, we've renegotiated with Lewisham Council, with L&Q, with the GLA, with a bill contract that came in 25% over budget, but we kept the quality. And I had to call Glenn up and say, actually, we need to borrow another 25%. And you guys went to credit committee and board, as we held 3 boards, and we started on site at 4 p.m. on the 31st of March. And the GLA had, I don't think they had a 0 in the box, but I remember Tom Copley, the Deputy Mayor for Housing, cheered, because I've been told that by the head of housing. And that was the first one across the line. So I'm really, really pleased. We got together to celebrate that. And if you could slide on again. And this is Janet. She's one of our board members. She's also a deputy head person, not master, I'm not allowed to say that anymore, in Lewisham. And she was celebrating the work that happened. We go to the next one. This is Callum. He's holding up the card, the London CLT card that said one day we would build homes. He's left, but before he did, he was able to say we started, and that was a really important moment. Next, Tom Copley from the GLA came out as well. And actually everyone turned up, all the arguments, all that struggle for from 2009 and 2016, everyone turned up for the start, but it was still under lockdown. So we took people round, we are building. More recently, we held our AGM. You can see things have progressed. Next slide. You see Dave, our chair, sharing our annual report. Stefan, thank you for the IT support. That grant got used well. That's why we have an excellent annual report, and Big Issue get a big shout out in that report. Next. And you see us discussing the future, and you may recognize this is Danny, who was once with Big Issue. And I think it's not always just the money, it's actually putting people on other people's boards, because we do need competence. And this is some of the community steering groups taking the baton, because we're going to move out of Brasted Close and start doing work elsewhere. So I'm sort of going to stop here, but there's 2 things I want to do, if I may. I forgot to do this, but I'll be leaving London Community Land Trust shortly, but I have been given a tentacle from that mural. We kept it. And there's another thing that we put into the facility agreement, which Glenn will know, because it's not often a borrower puts something in, but it's clause 14.3 social metrics on page 26, which I'm sure you've committed to memory, which obliges us to invite you to Brasted Close next year when it will be built and the residents will be moving in. And if you do come, then we can complete that clause, and you will also have a brick. If you're lucky, Glenn, it will be a tentacle. And then the next thing I wanted to say is what we do is beautiful, it's also brutal. And we need confidence and conviction. And it's not enough. It's not enough. The fact that Big Issue investors supported us, the fact that they've supported Russ, means that actually they're backing 50% of the finalists in the Open City Social Stewardship Awards. It is being recognised, but it's early days. And actually, we are subscale as a sector. And it's great to hear that Big Issue are looking to grow, but there needs to be competence to match that funding, and frankly, a little bit more aggression in the sector to get things done, because I think the communities do have the power, and if we can support them, we will deliver. Thank you very much. Apologies if I've taken too long.
Thank you, Rupesh. And thank you for the brick. That looks really cool. That is the brick. So moving swiftly along, we're going to have Social Stories Club, Karis, talk about the work that she and her organisation does.
Hi everyone, my name is Karis and I'm the co-founder of Social Stories Club. We're a social enterprise gifting company and we're committed to making a social impact. Now, I want to start way back when I was at the University of Edinburgh. I did a lot of volunteering because it's something I was really passionate about. I volunteered for the refugee night shelter. I volunteered to help elderly people learn how to use their iPads and in community spaces. But I found myself feeling quite frustrated a lot of time because we were so desperate for donations of people to volunteer their time, for money and of clothes and of food. I thought that there must be a better way. And when I went on a year abroad to Canada, I was very lucky to go to Vancouver, I came across a stall in the Freshers Fair and it was the Social Enterprise Club. I thought, oh, what's this? So I went up to them and I started to talk to them, and they told me that social enterprise was a way that you could create a social impact in a financially sustainable way. And I have to say that one conversation changed my whole life, because this is what I've been looking for. It made so much sense that businesses who had led in the exploitation of people and the environment for generations could be the ones to solve the problem. But I got speaking to lots of people when I went back to Edinburgh University to finish off my final year. I told everyone about social enterprises. I'd found honey that was supporting bee communities. I found furniture that was being made by individuals who were ex-convicts, but nobody knew that these companies existed. Nobody knew what social enterprises were, despite there being 471,000 social enterprises in the UK. And I was so passionate about it, I could visualize a new future. Just knowing about social enterprise gave me so much hope, because I can see a world where one day with every transaction we make, we'll be able to create a social impact. And I was talking to one of my friends, Ayush, and I told him I'm not going to get a grad job. I'm actually going to start a social enterprise, because I have to tell everyone about all these wonderful social enterprises out there. And I asked him, do you want to join me? And he said yes. And that one conversation in the kitchen, we decided we were going to put together gifts to introduce people to all these amazing social enterprises and their stories. And all these gifts would create an impact. So inside each gift, you can have teas, which can educate girls in tea-growing regions, chocolate supporting reforestation projects, soap, which empowers individuals with disabilities. And it was really important for us to share the stories behind these social enterprises, so people could visualize that same future that I'd visualized, and they could really connect with the impact as well. And so we support, at the moment, 12 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we support 30 different social enterprises. But when we started out back in December 2018, we really didn't know anything about business. This was our logo that I created on PowerPoint. This was the boxes that I stayed up to 2 a.m. in the morning stamping every single night. And we were just going around market stalls all around the UK, just talking to people, just telling people about social enterprises, that they're here, and trying to gain some market research as well. Well, a lot has happened in the last 3 years, and this is us now in 2021, and we've come a very, very long way. I did not design that logo. In 2019, we had a pop-up shop in Edinburgh Waverley. In 2020, we received the Big Issue Invest funding, and we were able to move into our first premises. Now we've outgrown 2 premises, and we need a warehouse in 2021, and we're gearing up to the really big Christmas orders that we're about to receive. In 2020, because of the Big Issue Invest funding, we were able to hire our first individuals with barriers to employment who were packing our gift boxes. And this is something that was really important for us from the start. We were wanting to do from the start, but we needed that funding in order to be able to start this off. And we really appreciate that the Big Issue Invest gave us that opportunity in order to really be able to accelerate the growth of our company. So we've provided over 1,000 hours of employment to individuals barriers to employment. We've invested £180,000 in the social enterprise economy, supported 30 social enterprises, and introduced 10,000 people to social enterprise. And our plans are, this Christmas, we're hiring 10 individuals as barriers to employment on a training program to pack our boxes. And next year, we want to have a training program that goes beyond just the Christmas season. Obviously, gifting gets very busy at Christmas, but we want to have something that's more financially sustainable. So we have gifts throughout the year, and we can have an ongoing training program, which is something we're really excited about. And we're also going to be providing this training alongside some collaborations with the community. So this is myself, and this is Ayush, but our team goes way beyond the 2 of us and our staff. When we got in touch with the Big Issue Invest, they got us in touch with the most amazing mentors who have really been game-changing for our company, because it's not enough to be a social enterprise in order for corporates to buy from you. You have to have an offering which is very attractive. You have to understand their language. You have to be able to deal with all of the supply challenges in advance. So when they buy from you, it's a very similar service to the gifting companies who they've been buying from for years. And that's how the Big Issue Invest have really helped us. Those mentors have been the heads of procurements of corporates, and they've been able to make sure that what we have and what we can provide is incredible customer service at a really high level. So we're very grateful for that. The Big Issue invested in us first back in 2020 and again in 2021, and they have been so unbelievably flexible, and we're so grateful that you believed in our idea and that you helped us create the impact that we've done today. The investments that we received really kickstarted us off, and we just wouldn't be here today without the support that we've received. So we're very, very thankful for that. Oh, one bit too fast. So this Christmas, if you are looking for a gift, please head over to our website, socialstoriesclub.com. All of our gift delivery is carbon neutral, which we're really excited about. And yeah, introduce someone to social enterprise this Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we move on to sustainable workspaces with James.
So my name is James Byrne. I'm the co-founder of Sustainable Workspaces and a partner at Sustainable Ventures. It was really amazing to see the various different startups and products from social enterprises on the screen that we just heard about, because many of those are the ones that we've supported. So you can really start to see the ecosystem around Big Issue Invest actually being in place, and it's a great thing to see. So I wouldn't usually put this on the screen. I don't think I've ever actually done this before on a talk, but I think it's quite topical given you're probably already amply aware about the discussions going on in Scotland over the next couple of weeks. And for 10 years, we've been working in sustainability. Our vision has been to address climate change and resource scarcity, and to do that through commercial solutions. So very much in the same way that Big Issue Invest, sort of Big Issue as a whole, wants to help people help themselves, and not be reliant on charity and the limitations that can have from scaling that impact. We've been very much about creating things that scale impact through making money, and therefore you can continuously scale that in theory, and we've gone out to try and prove that that's the case. What we've found over the last 10 years ago, nobody wanted to really talk to us about sustainability. Today, that's an incredibly different situation, but the problem is we've lost 10 years. And we're now in a situation where the events that we were worried would happen are happening again and again. The world is on fire, it is get washed away, and we're probably not going to be able to hit 1.5 degrees. And at that point, we lose all the coral reefs. Above that, we lose all the coral reefs. We have increasing numbers of people dying from heat exhaustion on the street, and more things on fire. So obviously that's all a very depressing thing, and there's no way we can not try to do more and more to address that. But what we have been seeing is huge amounts of investment come into the space, and that has meant that we've been able to help and support a huge number of businesses. So over the years, we've supported over 300 organizations, all with huge impact. So we support those organizations and they go on to have impact, in some cases scaling all over the world. And a lot of that impacts in the UK as well. We were on track to support over 1,000 organizations by 2025. And a lot of that activity comes through a few different activities across sustainable ventures that we do. So we have created our own companies. When we first got going, we were founding businesses as entrepreneurs, and much in the same as we've just heard from Social Stories, but we did that again and again. And over the years, we've created lots of different types of business support mechanisms that allow us to help other entrepreneurs grow faster, both commercially, but critically their impact, of which there are many different types, and I'll explain in a minute. We also have made more investments into early stage clean tech businesses than anyone else, and scaling that quite quickly. And we have a range of business support activities, very specialist things that we couldn't find that we now offer to others, which have led to a huge impact. And what I'm here to mainly talk about today is sustainable workspaces and the investments that Big Issue Invest have made into sustainable workspaces. Quite frankly, we wouldn't be Europe's largest ecosystem of sustainable businesses if those investments have been made. So we're just incredibly appreciative of that support. So a couple of months ago, we put this up as part of the launch of our latest workspace, and it is dramatically out of date already. So it was 255 3 months ago. It's now 300, and we're accelerating very, very quickly. We've helped our organizations raise over 500 million, again, accelerating quickly. They've delivered over 1,200 jobs. Most of that's in the last few years. And we have a very high diversity ratio within those organizations that we've supported. We're nearly at a 50-50 split of female members in our workspaces, which, given the general tech sector, is exceptionally high. So the way that we try to address beneficiaries and create this impact is through the number of companies that we support and how fast they're scaling. So really, we're not typically interested in something that's going to be 1 or 2 people and have effect in a small area. It's about scaling that organization to be very, very big. And we've seen that happen many, many times. So the way that we try to look at things is often mapping, and we do produce an impact report. And I think there's a few things we could definitely learn from Big Issue on that front, and we look forward to scaling it up. So it's really interesting to hear some of those activities, and hopefully we can build some more of those things in. But we have done a lot of the mapping, and I was reading through the Big Issue impact report and looking at where we had the most significant overlaps. Now, a lot of our activity is in environmental sustainability, but there was a huge amount of impact in social sustainability as well, particularly in, I think, 10, 11 and 8, which is kind of sustainable cities, inclusive job growth and education. So I want to give you an example of one of the organizations we've supported over the years. So we've invested in a company called AirX. We've also been a workspace member for many, many years. They put ventilation control devices into typically social housing, and has a huge impact on social landlord tenants, and addresses fuel poverty. It also addresses health issues. And they've just won a mechanism through some public funding, which is one of the few organizations in the country to have done that, and that's going to allow them to scale very quickly. In recognition of that, Barclays Social Impact Capital have just made a big investment, and they're scaling rapidly. You can see the sort of thing that we do with each of those organizations, mapping their SDGs, and then as they grow, we can start to scale and show that impact as it moves forward. So sustainable workspaces, wanted to show you the first space that we undertook. The reason we did sustainable workspaces in the first place, the reason we set up a community interest to deliver that, was as entrepreneurs, we could not find a type of space that was suitable for our needs. Somewhere we could roll in tons of batteries, somewhere we could build things, somewhere we could grow things. Actually now we have, I think, 1 million black soldier flies growing in this space, using waste to kind of get turned into animal protein feed. But fundamentally, what we were able to do, we actually did a lot of that work ourselves at that point back in 2014, is create this very unique curated community of organizations. So we had in 2015, 20 charities, social enterprises and startups, the highest concentration of sustainable organizations in the UK in one space. But quite quickly, we ran out of space. I mean, within 6 months, we were kind of packed to the rafters. So we found another space with one of our partners, Land Securities. The problem was we had to convert this warehouse, and we needed some money to do it. And that's when we started our relationship with Big Issue. And Glenn and others were incredibly supportive at that time. So we converted an empty warehouse, a meanwhile use space, into Europe's largest community of sustainable organizations. So we had over 270 members, individuals at that point. I think we were up to 40 organizations at one point, but we had to leave that. So throughout this, we've needed to leave the meanwhile use spaces we've been in. We've not wanted to be in meanwhile use spaces, mainly because we realized quite quickly that you have to leave and it's a lot of effort to fit them out. And you can get that disbursement of the ecosystem community. So throughout, we've been trying to find a long-term home. But in the meantime, we had to move out of there. So actually the loan that we received from that will be repaid within a month or so, I believe, which is going to be really nice milestone. And it's always great for us to think that money's going back and then can be reused again by others. So we moved to another meanwhile use site. Again, we did pretty much the same thing, and we needed money again. So we came back to Big Issue, received another loan. We fit the space out. Again, this went, I think at this point, we got up to about 33,000 square feet, and even more organizations we were supporting. But ultimately, we were trying to find that long-term home. And we've been working for many years on this particular building. And when we came to do this, given we were trying to do it for 10, 20-year time frame, we were trying to take a space within there. It's going to be between 45,000 and 50,000 square feet, and with prime river views, but hadn't been used since 1986 when the GLC left. We were able to secure really interesting kind of commercial terms for that, very favourable because of the nature of the owner of the building, but we needed a huge amount of money to fit it out. Unfortunately, Big Issue were able to come in and provide a big slice of that funding. We've also had to work with a number of other partners to do that. So we put some money in ourselves, got a little bit of central government innovation funding, and then we managed to get the unlocking funding from Lambeth Council. All of this has very specific social impact metrics sitting behind it that we need to deliver. It's inclusive jobs. These are not just for Big Issue, but for the likes of Lambeth Council as well. So whenever we do a fit out, we design it to be a sales platform essentially for all of our members' products and services. So the ones that you've just heard about, the likes of Divine Chocolate, they are literally sitting in County Hall today, and we use that to help them sell further products and services, fitting out the space where it's a building product, but also in our shop, the fact we have 20, well, we used to have 20, and we will again have 20, 30,000 visitors come through the door, hundreds of events a year, very specialized activity. And given the prominency of that building, the exposure to politicians, to high level delegates, it becomes really powerful for all of our members. So this is the third floor. So we've just delivered this as a kind of first phase at County Hall. It's in total about 20,000 square feet, about 45 organizations in here. We're at 100% capacity now, a couple of months into launch, well ahead of schedule. And it's getting really busy, and it's amazing to see all our organizations starting to work together as they used to before the pandemic hit. And I got asked a question just before, how, aside from all the business support stuff that we do as an organization to help our organizations grow, whether that be, advising them on one of the big programs we run, or, the many starters that we have implemented. I think we're up to 28, 29 over the last few months deployed. What happens in the space? How do organizations work together? And I was sort of explaining that actually I've seen, just as one example, one of our members previously, Toast Ale, was selling one of our members toilet paper and also coffee at the same time without the others being there, to a buying director of a corporate, because it made them stand out, because it was a better story. And ultimately they all go on to sell more things that are obviously a higher impact than their competitors traditionally would have been. So this is the live space at the moment. A few of our members on the wall, only a few of them, can't quite get them all on. And this is the second phase that we're working on now. So the design, development, construction will happen over the next 12 months. There'll be over 1,000 members there in total when we're finished. And we'll hopefully get up to about 100 organizations. So really one of the centers in the world for sustainable innovation and social impact. Gives you a bit of an idea for what it looks like now. It literally, the GLC did pack up in 1986, left, and it's been empty ever since then. So you sort of left with a nice 1920s parquet flooring, the bathrooms, the fireplaces, but yes, the only occupants for the last 36 years have been pigeons, which seems to be a great shame given where it is. So here's a couple of artists' concepts of what it hopefully is going to look like. We're just working up the sort of revised versions now. It's been many years since we originally did this. The pandemic put a bit of a break on what we were hoping to do, but it's been it's been very important to be able to work with such trusting long-term partners. It's a big issue to be able to carry through what's been a pretty tricky patch to navigate, but hopefully now the ecosystem, the environment for sustainable business, for social impact business, has never been better. And off the back of COP and the levels of investment that are coming through, we're seeing some amazing things happen. And it is possible that we can start to turn the tide in terms of the degradation of the environment, and also all of the other social impacts that we create, the thousands of jobs, the inclusive pathways for local residents, and particularly in areas like Lambeth, where we're working very closely with the council to make sure that young people today do get the green jobs that politicians are regularly talking about, but they don't always know where they are, and we have lots of those. So it's starting to be well received. I think that's what I'd like to say today, and thank you for listening, and thank you to Big Issue. We generally would have not done any of this without you, and we hope to continue that relationship for a long time. It was really amazing to see that kind of projection and show of impact across the whole of the UK. And one of the things that we're working on now is how we can replicate the blueprint of ecosystem, job creation and green growth that we've done in London to lots of other cities across the UK and beyond. And obviously we want to continue to work with partners like Big Issue Invest and others to do that growth. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And we did spend a team day in Sustainable Workspaces area, and it does look as good as the pictures, so I can confirm. We now have Kevin Lloyd-Evans, our head of lending, to talk about our future strategy at Big Issue Invest. Kevin?
Hi. This feels really weird after COVID, you know, actually being with people. I asked for two things. Yeah, I asked for two things. One was, please don't put me anywhere near Nigel when Nigel speaks, because he's a great speaker. And the other was, don't put me anywhere near investees, because investees are great and everybody wants to hear more. We're already running behind time, so I'm going to try and keep my section quite brief. I'd like to start off by just talking a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, which is strategy and culture. And I say this at all the presentations that I make. Daniel thinks I say it to impress him, but it's not true. I actually really like working at Big Issue Invest. I think Big Issue Invest is a really good organization. It's got a great culture and it's got a really good history. I often use the word proud. I say I'm really proud to work for an organization that really has its origins in tackling poverty and disadvantage. And the other thing I like about working at Big Issue Invest is my title, which is Head of Lending, because basically everybody thinks I run the show, apart from Daniel. So Lars and Johnny and all the others, everybody thinks they all report to me. So it makes me sound really grand, but actually my job title is a little bit more grandiose than what I actually do. As Stuart, who used to work at BI, is saying to himself, this is a topsy-turvy world, because Kevin's just got up and he's head of lending. When I worked at Big Issue Invest, he didn't know anything about lending. So I'm a bit stuck now because I want to move because I can't see the screen, but Ben won't let me move to see what I've actually wrote. So can I just go back to the slide? So I'm really just going to put into context some really great products and new funding streams that we've got coming online. So the reason why I'm sort of being asked to do this section is because I've been working in social investment since about 2011, and I've seen the sector develop in different ways. I've put a number of questions up there, which I would describe as saying probably, I call them opportunities and challenges, which the sector faces. So the first one is around, lots of people ask, how do social enterprises get to scale? How do they grow? The next question people talk about are getting equity-like funds into the social investment sector, and say that's a challenge. The next one is, how do you actually expand the take-up of social investment? So how do you actually reach more charities and social enterprises? So social investment in many instances has been seen as quite lots of cash available, but not a lot of demand. And also social impact. How do you measure social impact? You often read about, you know, social impact investing, but people seem to have trouble measuring social impact across diverse sectors. And then there's this idea of profit with purpose. Should the social sector expand through private companies, which, you know, you have a basic logical argument, which is that the companies are doing good work, then why not invest in those organizations and help them do more good work? And then can you actually make any money out of it? So, you know, is there any point financially? Are you ever going to make any money without subsidy? Who knows? And then the other one, which is really often asked, is about connecting with mainstream investment, and can social enterprises connect with mainstream investment houses? And that's always seen as an opportunity that the sector is sort of trying more to do. Big issue investors had a good record of being able to do that, particularly through the Threadneedle Fund. In 2011, Boston Consulting Group, they did a report and they said that by 2016, social investment market would be worth £1 billion. Last week, Big Society Capital produced a report and said that the social investment market was worth 6.8 billion and social loans were worth 2.8 billion. I said it was a 3-time increase in the size of, in terms of the expansion. So that's quite a remarkable story, given the fact that we've had 10 years of austerity and a global pandemic. I'm not saying that the figures are made up, not at all. I'm just saying that, the figures are, particularly strong. So against that kind of backdrop, social investors like Big Issue Invest have to sort of think about what is the role of Big Issue Invest in quite a diverse market, in a market that's got lots of new players. People are looking at niches, people are looking to grow. And Warren mentioned one of the things that Big Issue Invest has been doing over the last 12 months is really thinking about its strategy. It's got a great history. And the strategy that we've developed really relies on that history. And I think what I like about Big Issue Invest, and I think in terms of social lenders, the reason why I think we're actually one of the best, probably the best social lenders, because we're actually from a social organization. We're rooted in poverty and disadvantage because that's what Big Issue was set up to do, and that's part of the DNA of the organization. So I often say this, that someone with my background probably wouldn't get an opportunity to get up and talk to people who are predominantly from finance outside of an organization other than Big Issue Invest. So I always feel quite connected to it. And our strategy is really quite exciting. Warren touched upon it, that it's been developed over a number of months with consultants, but really it's just about saying that we're a people organization, we value impact, and we really would say, rather than being classified as a financial services organization, we're a people organization where people, not just the people that work for the organization, but the communities that we're working in, they're really important, and it's a two-way relationship. And underpinning that is sort of 3 pillars that we offer support. We look at impact and equality. Equality is really important because it's equality of access to finance, but it's equality for the communities that we work in. So it's like saying, if you live in a poor neighborhood, do you get a hot meal? And it's like saying, we support organizations that give people money to set up food banks, to set up employment training. So equality is very ingrained in what we do. And support is saying that there's a growing recognition that social investors, they've had piles of cash, but they haven't been able to engage with charities and social enterprises. And what we're trying to do is to say, okay, well, you need to support people before they apply for finance and also after. So our strategy is actually quite strong, but it is rooted in the mission of Big Issue, and it is rooted in a 30-year history for the organization. And I try to kind of, there's a saying in business, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And, so you can have a strategy, but you have to take the people in the organization. So how does that translate on a day-to-day level? So for me and my job, some of the staff at BII are going to be saying, well, I've never heard of any of this before, because actually it's just something that I've been developing myself. But it's like how I describe the process of how I work with clients. And so, for example, I think somebody mentioned it earlier on, when people talk about origination. I don't talk about origination in sales, I talk about engagement, going out, speaking to people. I talk about deal flow, we talk about capacity building. Transactions is more about relationships. Finance people talk about enforcement and monitoring. And I think you need to sort of listen and respond to what's happening. I think one of the speakers earlier on was saying that when they ran into problems, Big Issue Invest was quite good at being patient and a little bit flexible. And I'm not just using those buzzwords because everybody's talking about them at the moment, but I think that's been one of the things that we've been really good with our clients. We've been able to respond to what their needs are. And then the other thing that's kind of been key to the sector is, traditionally, people that have worked in social investment have come from a banking sector, but we're seeing more people that have got lived experience and have actually worked for social enterprises, and we're seeing that actually, people say, well, I think there's a saying about hiring and firing and how people sort of hire on skills but fire on attitude. But you can, in the social sector, you can get people with the right attitude and build up their technical skills so that they can work with people and they can lend money. Whereas previously people thought it was the other way around. And I think the idea of just financial returns needs to be balanced out more with impact. And I think that the final sort of way that we generally work is that sometimes social investment has been about, here's a product and it's designed and it's a standard product. We've often said that that's not really the issue. For an organization like Big Issue, when it got founded, people wouldn't understand the mechanics of what it was trying to do. So what we've sort of say is that the clients that we're working with have problems, and what our sort of task is to work out what their financing problem is, and can we sort of address that problem to individually to their circumstances, because if they weren't applying to us, they probably have nowhere else to go. So the main thread of sort of our work at the moment is building impact across that, but also building it amongst the culture of the organization and the culture of the people. And just as a sort of an introduction to the next set of speakers, just introduce, I think Johnny is going to do a little bit on Matu from Unlimited. They're going to talk about a fund called Growth Impact Fund, which is kind of summarizes a lot of these points. It's about identifying minority entrepreneurs, looking at equity investments. And the reason why I quite like the GIF as a fund program, and I'll say this honestly, a lot of people kind of were a little bit skeptical about it, and it's actually come on a long way, and they've really developed sort of the methodology, and it's really getting some traction, and it's actually got quite a lot of momentum. So I'll hand over to Johnny and Matu.
Thanks, Kevin. Seamless. And actually, just before we jump on, this is a really useful slide in terms of what we're thinking about the Growth Impact Fund. And it's almost like we carefully coordinated this, but it's a complete fluke. We're doing an awful lot of work in terms of reaching diverse communities of how we de-jargonize our language. And you will need to hold me to account on that as well through this presentation, because I'm particularly terrible at it, as Matthew will profess to. Matthew, do you want to hop up? And then it's not just me. If we could skip to the next slide, that would be brilliant. I've got the clicker. No, of course, great. I'm in control. So this is the Growth Impact Fund, and we are really excited to talk to you today about this, to talk to you about the partnership that we're developing with Unlimited, a really important partnership for us as part of the work that the two organizations will be doing. This takes us back 18 months, 24 months, where Matu and I were talking and we went, we're thinking about the same thing, and we've got the really complementary skill sets to do this well and to do this right. We recognize that the decade of social investment experience and the building on the track record of the social enterprise investment funds is really important, and the wider lending funds and the work that corporate social venturing is doing is really important to feed into what we do next. But also we recognize that we need the best of the best business support, technical assistance for those organizations to do this well into diverse communities. And that's exactly what Unlimited bring. So what is it? The Growth Impact Fund exists to invest into diverse-led organizations. We want to tackle inequality, and one of the ridiculous realities of what we face in our sector and the wider sector is actually that those organizations who are best placed to tackle inequality, those individuals with lived experience of inequality, diverse-led ventures, are actually the ones that are most commonly overlooked in the sector. And actually, we want to go about addressing that and changing that in a really, really specific, intentional way, rather than it being a kind of side shoot to something that we might do, hence the fund dedicated to doing that. There are over 30,000, and this astounded me in terms of when we started doing our research in partnership with Shift in this. It's over 30,000 organizations who are diverse-led, who are currently being overlooked for investment. So the way that we profiled that was looking at the subsection of social enterprise. It was mentioned earlier, I think, that there's over 400,000 in the UK, down to how many of those are diverse-led, down to how many of those fit the right type of liquidity, there goes the jargon, the right type of cash profile, the right type of growth profile for a fund for us to invest into. And we worked through that and we did a lot of listening. It was a really important part of the design process, was to listen, to listen, to listen. And the feedback we got was actually that we need to develop some kind of ecosystem to support them. And it's got to be more than just capital. There were two key things that were picked out as part of what these organizations were lacking. And the first one is that there is systematic inequality within investment more broadly. And that's really key. Accepting that that exists means that we can work out how to address it. And the second piece was that there is a lack of equity-like capital, particularly in our sector. And it is typically quite a debt-saturated sector. And this is very unhelpful for where a lot of the diverse-led ventures lie, which is at the earlier stage. So we want to do something about that as well. So what we've done, we've developed an ecosystem. True to our word. Again, this is all part of the listening process of what works as we go forward with this fund. The first point is a bespoke equity-like product, not particularly groundbreaking, given the feedback was that there's not enough of it. How can we be, and to Kevin's buzzwords, flexible, patient with the finance and with our capital? Something that we've done an awful lot of through CEIF, through the Outcomes Fund, through lending, through corporate social venturing, but something that we can build a fund structure specifically around, which is really exciting. The second thing is business support. How can we offer that well? How can we make that work alongside investment? And how can we support organizations and put the entrepreneur first throughout everything that we do? And there was a third, which I've completely mind blanked, but it was probably very important. And that finally leads us on to what's the fund going to look like? The fund is going to look like a £25 million evergreen structure fund. It's going to invest predominantly equity and quasi-equity, and by quasi-equity, to de-organize that, it's going to be a percentage of revenue in a debt instrument, and that's going to be the focus of our fund. We are leveraging all of the work that we've done through particularly the Social Enterprise Fund in terms of those types of instruments that we've invested into, and carved out the track records to explain how we're going to move forward with that fund. I will stop talking and pass it over to Matthew.
Hi, everyone. So as with anything, it's the people who are going to make this work. And we have two governance committees that are really going to help get us on our way. The first is our investment advisory committee, which I'm really proud to say is majority female. Will be chaired by Sarah Redford, who's on the Big Issue Invest board and has also worked with Unlimited, as well as entrepreneurs that we've worked with and experience in the venture capital sector, as well as community builders across the country. The second is an impact advisory group who are really there to hold us to account, to make sure we hit the targets that we are aiming for when it comes to impact. That will be chaired by Stephen Bediaco. If you've been along in the sector, you know he's a serial entrepreneur and is a real champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then just talking about how this is really, really exciting, we've got a total of 9.1 million that's already been committed to the Growth Impact Fund. That's from a variety of the funders listed below, and also includes a major corporate bank that is really excited to have this be their UK foray into social impact investing. I'm going to end on something that I've seen on the slides a lot. Big Issue and now Unlimited. You guys say we back human potential, regardless of what people look like, where they come, what they sound like. It's the opportunity that's limited. And I think with the Growth Impact Fund, we're really trying to change that.
Thank you. And so from one product to another, we've now got John Gilligan to talk about Fund 4.
Thanks, Ben. Clapping me before I speak is already an optimist thing to do. I only have one slide and no clicker. Thank you. My name's John Gilligan, and if you're an investor, I'm one of the people who look after your money. And I think it's an important thing to say that we value the contributions and we take the responsibility of looking after your money very seriously. We're custodians of your money if you're an investor, and we're custodians of your business when we invest. We've talked a lot about how we're good custodians as investors, and I think we've proved that through the pandemic. We've also proved we're good custodians to our investors. What we did, as has been described by a number of my colleagues over the course of the last couple of years, is thought about what do we need to do in the future to scale? And what we've done is we've gone through each of our investments and said, where does it fit into the universe of financial rewards and impact rewards and everything in between? And where we've got to is a model which says, we have a guy holding the tiller who keeps us pointing to the star. That's Daniel's job. It stops financiers like me wandering off and doing things I shouldn't do. And then financiers like me have gone off and thought about, well, how do we access the capital markets other people get money from? Because our job is to take money from where it's plentiful and deploy it where it's not. Because we're a UN SDG 1 fund in modern worlds, but when we all started, me 9 years ago here, we just talked about poverty. And what we do is we take money from where it's plentiful and put it where people in poverty are. And we use business methods to make sure it goes back to where it came from so we can get some more. That's how simple we are. Fund 4 is based upon the idea that in our portfolio, we've learned that there are businesses that are risky and need equity. But there's also a host of businesses that are not risky. And what they need is debt and people who understand how they work. So for example, Hereford Mine we talked about earlier on, Pete talked about, it's a business where we were never at risk of losing all the money. We just had to be patient and sensible. And ultimately, we got a great result of getting the money back, or Lars got the money back, frankly. And I literally punched the air the day that he phoned me and told me the money had come back. We had many conversations where we could have bailed out of that situation and got some of your money back. And we sat there and we said, no, this is not the right time. There are lots of other businesses where we can do more. So when we went through our portfolio and looked at what we'd done in the past, we do about 1/3 of the funding of our investee companies. So if we put £1 million in, there's probably another 3 or 4 going in from somewhere else. At the moment, we have in our existing portfolio customers like Sustainable Workspaces, for example, who will need more capital in the future. And we said to ourselves, well, we know these people, we're involved with these people, why don't we do it? Why are people going to banks when we could do this as well? So Fund 4 says we're going to invest in the people we know and people like them and do more ourselves. So we're going to be in smaller groups rather than in complex syndicates. For example, HCT that Lars and I and James work on a lot is a complicated syndicate. If it was simpler, it would have been easier. We're fortunate we now have the best management team in that business and we will get your money back. I'm not promising, but I'm pointing you in that direction. So Fund 4, much bigger, £100 million, deployed over 5 years on commercial terms. And to be a bit of corporate finance, I'm a corporate financier, it'll go from the secured debt into the junior debt. And sometimes we'll do a bit of equity like Village Underground, not all the time. So what we're asking is for commercial lenders to deploy capital into social investment in businesses that are not targeted only on profit. I'm an accountant by background, and if you don't make a profit, your balance sheet disappears eventually, so you have to make some profit. Our investors don't have to maximize their profit. And that's the target market for this fund, is people who are doing impactful things, Daniel and particularly Josh and Chloe, who actually literally write the covenants of the impact. I don't do it. Keep us on impact. And then the investment committee, myself, some other colleagues around the room, make sure your money is safe and that we're good custodians of it. And that allows us to deploy cash into businesses like Sustainable Workplaces and all the others in this room to enable them to do the impact investing. We deliver no impact at all. Our investees deliver it all. And hopefully, we'll be able to continue doing it at scale and looking after your capital as we do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I hand over to Danielle Sattar, CEO of Big Issue Invest.
The clicker. So as everything I have to say to you is fair and true, before standing up, I did actually check the height of the International Space Station so that I could actually say that that figure there about how high the mound of big issue magazines that have been printed over the years would really surpass the height of the International Space Station. And it really does. It's an extraordinary achievement. Well, actually, there isn't a pile of big issue magazines going up into space higher than the International Space Station, but you know what I mean. And when people decided to go to the moon, they didn't actually know how to get there. They kind of spent time working it out, and they got there. So if I am clicking the right way, no, this is it. This was Nigel's dream. Nigel Kershaw. So Nigel isn't here today. He's still just sheltering while his booster vaccine kicks in thoroughly. And I can really verify that Nigel loves nothing more than to attend these AGMs other than attending Arsenal Football Club. And Nigel has not been attending Arsenal Football Club games. So I know, and Nigel is going to be there on Zoom, that he is making a very big sacrifice by not being here today. This was Nigel's dream in 2006. This is the diagram that Nigel drew. Whoops, if I can just fall off the stage temporarily and out of Zoom sight. These are the funds that he wrote at the bottom. And I'm sorry to be out of camera range for you here. At the bottom, he listed £5 to £10 million funds that we were going to do in 2006. That's what he wrote. And that's what we did. And you heard about them this morning. The Outcomes Investment Fund, the Social Enterprise Funds 1 and 2, those weren't exactly the funds that he conceived, but he wrote them there and they were broadly in the market that we were doing. He talked about the investors. That's you. You came into these funds. The investors he described actually invested. He talked about the magazine and partnerships. And then being an extraordinary entrepreneur, he did a whole bunch of stuff on the side. So the public markets, Columbia Threadneedle's Social Bond Fund, it's now at £370 million alongside the multi-asset climate solutions fund that Nigel dreamed up after a conference that he attended on the environment. And bursting with enthusiasm, he said, we must do something. And 18 months later, the Max Fund appeared. So a stack of things out of the edge here. The big exchange, democratizing finance was another vision, is another vision of Nigel's. And the big exchange lets people participate with their ordinary investing in there. So that was Nigel's 2006 vision. And this is a quote he really likes to say, what is now proved was once only imagined, which is a quote by William Blake, who actually lived in Lewisham, not very far from where London Community Land Trust Network is building its houses. And I have to say, you put up the picture of a person there, and you mentioned her first name. I don't know her first name. I know her surname. And I was at the London Community Land Trust AGM in East London, and I had one of these moments where I was walking along and I saw her face and I thought, oh, where does she work? I know her, she's really familiar. She must be with a trust and foundation, or she must be with a social investment organization. And I just could not place where she was because I knew this person for years. And the reason why I don't know her first name, the reason why I know her surname is she is Miss Emmanuel. And we call her Miss Emmanuel because she's a school teacher at my children's school in Lewisham. And she's there at the Community Land Trust Network because she's there involved in the project to build homes in her community. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing. And what was being imagined at that meeting a few years previously is now being proven with those homes in Lewisham and Miss Emmanuel. So this really happened. Nigel's 2006 slide, and this really is a slide from 2006, turned into this. This is the scale of deployment. Lending commitments, then our growth funds, CEF1 and CEF2, our outcomes fund, and our corporate social venturing, which we heard from people from earlier today. So it really did happen. It's extraordinary from that vision. So why do we have to do this stuff? And I don't want to be kind of gloomy, but actually I kind of am as we come into the winter. Yes, it was a very good thing to address the taper on universal credit, long overdue. It should never have been tapered at that rate in the first place by George Osborne, who was Chancellor at the time. It has been lifted, but it doesn't really do anything like enough as a taper. We've got high fuel costs, which hit the poor disproportionately. We've underinvested in home insulation, as we well know from our colleagues at Insulate Britain. In fact, they were even blocking the cycle lane as I cycled across Southwark Bridge the other day. So they really are kind of full on. It's not looking great if you're on a low income. And frankly, it hasn't looked great for 10 years for people in poverty, with a decline in real incomes or a scarce increase in the value of real wages. So it is not a great situation. So all of the organizations that we support are needed now more than ever. And that's the reason why we're raising shed loads of money, because that's what we can do. We need to raise that money, as John Gilligan was saying earlier. We are the plumbers of the social enterprise world. We take pools of money from places that have got it, and we plumb it through to places that need it. And that's the plumbing that we've got to do. So our vision is backing human potential. This is Warren Taylor led us in this strategy work that we did with Lippincott and with Oliver Wyman. And that was what we concluded as a team. That's what we do. We back human potential. I kept saying to the consultants, can't I say we invest in human potential? Can't I say we lend for human potential? They said, look, your big issue invest. People already know that. You back human potential. I said, yeah, we back human potential. So the staff and really came up with this. And I think it came out of those staff workshops that we are impact first, and we're deeply committed to social equity, social equality. And we do it by bringing more than the money. And we have tested each and every one of those things. So we need to grow in order to achieve the social impact we want and tackle the need for poverty that we experience in this country. The path that you've heard today is a path that through two funds, the Growth Impact Fund and Fund 4, will add £125 million to our assets under management. So that will take us from about 50 well up to 175. And the target of 500, the board said, why are you setting a pound target when you say your impact first? But it's the pounds that we need to get in to achieve that impact. That's our function. We have no impact. All the impact is delivered by the people that we invest in, that we've heard from today. That's why we love to bring them into the room. And if you want to see actual big issue invest money, it's that pipe. So that little steel pipe, that's the ventilation system that some of our loan money went towards providing for the ventilation that allows Collage Arts to open its buildings in this pandemic time. So you can literally see what money turns into. That's why we need to raise the money. So here we are on the 30th anniversary of the launch of the Big Issue magazine. And this is what we're doing. We're raising £125 million to back the mission of the Big Issue. So thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming here today. Thanks for being with us on Zoom and bearing with us while we wander on and off the stage. And I look forward to seeing you over the course of this year as we work with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, final housekeeping tips is the samosas here are really, really good. So they're all waiting outside for you, and I would recommend you get one quick.
Great. Oh, actually, Ben, I do have one final thing to say. You know, I've been flogging the Big Issue. Carlos is here, and he will relieve you of £3 to buy a copy of the Big Issue magazine. So please do buy a copy of the Big Issue magazine. And if you say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't carry cash anymore, well, you're out of luck because with the card reader, you can pay with your contactless card. So there we go. Thank you. Enjoy the semester.